Okay, so Rumi part two. So let's review. Oh, before we review, I already have a question. Karuchi?
Yes, I wanted to say I missed the folder um, for Rumi's second writing assignment, so I threw it in my into late work.
Oh, okay,
But it
okay.
was like by minutes, like bare, like just minutes.
Okay, okay, good. Good to know. All right, I'll take a
Have
note.
mercy.
Yes, I'll have mercy. Okay, great. Colon, same thing?
Nah, not that actually. Instead of doing the Ladder to Heaven poem, I did the Faithful Are One Soul.
Okay, well, that's okay. You did something. I think I counted you. Let me see, Colon.
I did the Faithful Are One Soul, and then I did a little bit of the Ladder to Heaven. Like
I
I
got
didn't know.
you. I have you down. You passed. Okay, good. All right, any other concerns before we start?
Nope.
Okay, great. All right, so let's get started. Let me review a little bit with you where we are, right? We're contrasting with Maimonides, right? So we know that unlike Maimonides, Rumi believes that the place where we connect to God is the heart, not the mind, right? And last time we talked about this particular knowledge of the heart, the way that the heart can know through direct experience, right? The heart is the one organ in our bodies, right, which can actually sense, right, the presence of God. We have many organs. We have the brain, we have the eyes, we have the mouth, the hands, right? We cannot sense God with our hands. We cannot sense God with our eyes. We cannot taste God, right? We cannot even think God, but we can feel God, right? So it's the one part of our bodies, right, which actually can connect, and so we can actually feel the presence of God. And this feeling is a form, is a knowledge, right? This is you knowing, encountering, but it's a knowledge which is experiential. It's not a cognitive knowledge, right? We talked about how this is also a way of knowing, right? When you feel the presence of something, you are in a state of knowledge, but it's a different kind of knowledge than the mind, right? So just like we can see light or touch, right, the table, the heart also can know through this way of feeling, right? So we talked about how the heart is actually capable of sensing the actual presence of God in a way that none of our organs can actually do, right? And this is very powerful that we have this particular organ which can actually perceive, right, God, sense God in the same way that I can sense this computer with my fingers or see the light with my eyes. The heart can sense. It's a sixth sense, right? Can sense the presence of God. So, but then we talked about how yes, just like the mind, right? How many of us, right, if you look into your hearts, you'll feel, well, I don't sense anything, right? A lot of us, when we, look into our hearts and we're like thinking, my very small minority actually can sense God, even though we all have the same organ, right? So the reason for that, Rumi says, the same that Maimonides was saying, that all of us have reason, but not all of us are able to really receive the divine providence, right? Because our reason is either too narrow or cluttered, right? So reason has to be purified so it can better receive the divine light, divine wisdom. Is the same for the heart, right? So make sure you write this down. Just like reason needs to be purified, the heart needs to be purified if it is going to be able to sense the divine presence or receive the divine presence, right? For Maimonides, we receive the divine light and wisdom. For Rumi, we receive directly the divine love and the divine presence and the divine peace, right? This is a different type of experience, right? Maimonides, he sees the divine as that which gives us clarity, right? And we see clearly what we need to do, how we need to act, what is right, what is wrong. This is divine light, right? Rumi, it's different. It's an emotional experience. We sense the divine love. We sense the divine peace. We sense the divine serenity. And that is sensing the divine itself, right? So, and if we are not feeling this, and most of us, to be honest, we're not feeling particularly loving or peaceful or joyful, right? The reason is simply this, that our hearts need to go through a purification process, right? So let's see. Yes, very nice, Ahmed. Would you like to share that so everyone can hear it?
So just as we need light in order to see, we need a pure heart in order to see God. Also wanted to add that the reason why Rumi feels that it's the heart that can only get to God, it's and you can't really like the intellect is completely the wrong organ. Something that I heard very similar to that to complement that is in the same way that um, the eyes can't hear and the ears can't taste. So
Okay, yes, very good. The mind can't feel God, right? It can just know, the mind can simply know what is right and wrong, I think. I don't think Maimonides would ever say that we can perceive God with our mind, but you can do so with the heart, right? And you're right, switching, thinking you can know about God's existence or presence with the mind is like trying to use your mouth to see, right? You cannot know, and this is one of our mistakes. A lot of us stumble on this. We think we need to know for sure that God exists with our minds, but the mind is incapable of ever coming to a conclusion as to whether God exists. However, the heart can know it, right? So to try to become certain about the divine existence or presence through the mind is a misuse of the organ, which is just there to show us what is the right thing, the wrong thing to do, right? According to Maimonides. Very good, nicely put. Okay, so yeah, another philosopher actually who said something similar. I'm trying to think. Who was it? We were reading. Yeah, Al-Ghazali. This is another Muslim philosopher who wrote a beautiful book called The Alchemy of Happiness, I think. Uh, Really nice book. Okay, I wish you wouldn't like spell check me. Al-Ghazali, yes, that's him, Islam. So it's called The Alchemy of Happiness. And in this book, he actually goes much deeper into the way that the heart can only contain the divine light if it is empty of impurities, kind of like a lampshade, right? If you have a lampshade which is all dirty, the light within is not going to be able to come out, right? It's the same. The heart for him is this vessel which contains the divine light, and if it's full of impurities, you cannot reflect it, right? So it's a very similar idea. You have this throughout a lot of Muslim philosophers are talking in those terms, right? This is very typical. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the purification of the heart, so that we can all begin to feel the divine light, hopefully after this. And we're going to actually talk today of three steps of purification. We did, I think, 5 with Maimonides, and now we're going to do 3. So let's start, right? Let's go to the ladder to heaven, which is where, here it is, ladder to heaven, page 13, right? And so we're talking here, of course, of this connection to the heavens, right? This is an illusion, certainly, maybe. I don't know the Quran that much, but does the Quran talk about Jacob and the dream he had of the ladder with the angels going up and down? Do you guys have that? Anybody know? Where are my Muslims? Where are my Quranic scholars?
I think the bit. I'm not sure actually. I don't know, but Jacob, Job or Jacob?
Jacob.
Jacob, Yaqub. Okay, got it. There's a story on Jacob, but I don't know if the latter has. I don't know yet. Yeah, I don't know enough knowledge.
Okay.
But
I'm
there is. They talk
curious.
about Jacob.
Yeah, check for me if you can, if there's a story about that. In the Hebrew Bible, we have the story of Jacob having a dream that there's a ladder connecting him to the heavens. So I'm curious if there is the similar story in the Quran, right? So if you can find that, I'd be interested. Okay, so the ladder to heaven, right? Whether this is Jacob or not, right? We have this connection, which is the heart, right? So we're going to talk about, but before we get into this text, I want to go back to Plato, like we did last time, because again, Rumi is building from Platonic perspective, and then he's kind of applying the Platonic perspective to his to the truths that he finds in Islam. So let's go back to Plato. I promised you I would tell you the story of the cave, right? Remember last time we were all in the cave, but now will I tell you the actual story? By the way, how many of you know this story of the cave in Plato? Put your hand on the screen. Two people, great. Okay. All right, so bear with me. Okay, so this is an allegory that Plato tells to talk about the human condition, right? So he says this. He says, once upon a time, there was a cave. And in this cave, there were people who had never left the cave. They were born in the cave. All that they ever saw was the cave, and that was their life. And they were prisoners in the cave, and they were bound and tied up. They couldn't leave. And they were chained, and this is interesting, they were chained in a way that they could only see the back of the cave. So they had chains that kept them from turning around, right? They were stuck in a position, and they had to see only the back of the cave. Now, outside of the cave, there's a lot going on. There's ordinary life. And what we have also is a huge bonfire. What do you call it? In front, not in front, but across from the mouth of the cave. And what this fire is doing is it's casting the shadows of what's going on in the street on the back wall of the cave. Are you picturing this? Usually I draw a picture on the board, but we don't have a board. So everybody picturing what's going on? Right, basically the people in the cave are seeing the shadows of what is going on outside because of this huge fire that is casting a light upon these people, and the shadow is then going into the cave. Put your hand on the screen if you're with me here. Okay, good. So they're seeing these shadows, and for them that's reality. That's all there is, right? They've never seen anything else. Now one day, one of them manages to squeeze out of the chain, right, that's holding him together. And he's, of course, excited. Finally, he can turn around, right, and see what's behind him. So he begins to turn. But of course, he's not accustomed to light, right, because he's only ever seen shadows. So at first, it's an incredibly painful experience. But he's so curious. He has to know. So he continues to turn, and he's squinting. He's like, I got to do this. So he gropes and crawls out of the cave with his eyes shut. And slowly, he gets to the mouth of the cave. And slowly, he begins to open his eyes. And when he's finally accustomed, he is like, wow. Immediately he realizes that he has been living in a world of shadows and that this is true reality, right? And so he runs back in the cave and he's like, come on, you guys, let me untie you. We've been living in a world of shadows. Here is the true reality outside. Follow me. And they're like, who are you? Right? Sit down. I'm trying to watch the shadows, right? And they kind of shut him down, right? They don't listen to him. And in the end, I forgot the ending, whether they kill him or they put him back in his chains or whether he escapes. I'm not sure. Anybody know the ending? Carucci, Delmas, whoever else knew knows the story? I forgot the ending. It's not a good ending, right? Okay. So Plato is saying basically that we are like these people in the cave. So what is he saying? Can anyone try to interpret what is this cave reality? What is true reality? Why do we have such a hard time switching to the true reality? Can anybody venture an interpretation? What does this story mean? How is this story about us? What are we missing out? What is this true reality? What do you think? Ibatulin, go ahead.
So um uh so the chains that the cavemen suffer from, I guess those are, in a sense, our passions and all of our sins, right? And the shadows that they're seeing is our world, right? And so only the person who first of all wants to get to God and get to the divine, right, first has to release himself from his shackles, right, which is the passions and the sins, and aka in other words, also you could say purify the heart, right? And then he has to ascend from into the cave, but the ascent is oftentimes painful. But at the same time, the light of the true world, right, which is the divine, the cause, you could say God, the cosmos, whatever. That the true world, even though the journey there is painful, it's ultimately purifying and it's real compared to the shadows and our world, which is full of lies and not as good to live in.
Kind of a bleak perspective on the world, right? We have with Plato. The world is a big prison. Carucci, do you want to add?
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit like the Matrix, right? So I think that the two main takeaways from the allegory of the cave, which I've read a while ago, it's been a minute, and I do forget the ending myself, but all of the symbolisms are meant to have us consider two things. the nature of perception, right? Which is all of the shadows that were cast on the wall. It's like this physical, superficial reality. Everything, it was at face value. So if it looked like someone was carrying something based on what the shadow projected onto the wall, then that's what it was. And then also the ignorance of, of that limited perspective that it creates, So if we can't turn our heads and look in a different direction, if we can't come out of the darkness and see things in a new light, it's almost, it's like when TV was invented and it was in black and white, and then the first person got a color TV set. It was like everything changed, right?
Great.
And it's like,
Very good.
this is ridiculous, like his shirt is red. Oh my God. Like who knew, So I think it's like that. So that's the takeaway, at least for me.
Okay, perfect. Yes, yes, exactly. Right. So Plato is talking about, when he talks about the cave, he means the material world. In other words, what he's saying is that most of us are caught in a strictly material reality. All we worry about are material things, right? And think of it. When you wake up in the morning, most of us are in this material realm. We're thinking, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I need a cigarette, right? Or, oh, I wish there was no school. I'm tired. And, he didn't text me yet. And what's going on with that? And we're all thinking, right, about strictly material things. Or she said that about me yesterday. And I hope I get a job. And I hope I pass, I hope I have a good GPA. All of these concerns, most of our concerns, and Plato is right, are within the realm of this cave, material reality. And what Plato is saying is that there is more to life than just material comfort. There's more to life than having a house and a white picket fence and 2 dogs and a husband or wife and 2.5 kids, right? I'm talking about the American dream, right? Most of us, that's what we're aiming for. When I have this, I can just, relax, right? And Plato is saying there's much more to life than just acquiring this, right? We should see connections with Job, right? There's connections here. And Plato is saying there is a deeper reality. There is a spiritual reality. For Plato, of course, it's not a religious reality like we'll see for Rumi. For him, it's the reality of our ideals. Okay, so for example, when we think about justice, when we think about truth, when we think about true love, right? When we think about perfect beauty, right? Anytime we have these thoughts which go beyond just purely survival or happiness, we are accessing this deeper reality of our ideals, how the world should be, right? So on the one hand, there's how the world is, and most of us are concerned with just being happy within that world. And Plato is saying we also have a deeper dimension to our lives, which is how the world should be, right? The realm of morality, the realm of the good, the realm of justice, of freedom, of truth, right? So this translates as follows. So for example, suppose you're all day thinking about, your boyfriend who didn't text you for the last 4 hours, right? Or you're thinking about this girl that said this to you, and then all of a sudden, maybe you're watching something on TV, and you're starting to think, I wish there was more justice in this world. At that moment, boom, you've stepped out of the cave, right? Or you're sitting and you're just hungry and you want to go home, and all of a sudden you realize, I wonder what true love is like, right? At that moment, you've also stepped out, right? Anytime you're thinking of a higher, of an ideal reality, of how things should be, you are stepping out of the cave, right? So Plato was saying the true reality is this preoccupation with these ideals. That's really what makes us human. That's really what constitutes our uniqueness in the cosmos, right? We are people who are concerned with how things should be, not just with the next meal, like our pets, right? Your dog is not thinking, I wish there was more justice in the world. No, your dog is thinking, when are you feeding me, right? So he's saying we are more than the animal in the animal realm, right? We are also thinking about these ideals. And for him, that's the true reality. And of course, it's not easy to switch, right? When you're so used to thinking about your own happiness, it's not really natural for you to start thinking about justice, truth, true love, and so forth, right? So that's the Platonic story, right? Now, Rumi is going to build on that. And for him, of course, 2 realms, right? Material, same thing. And then there's what he calls the spiritual realm. So he's shifting a little bit, right? From Plato. He's saying now this realm is the realm of God, the realm of the divine, which he considers, of course, to be, like Plato, the true reality, right? Now, here's the difference with Plato. For Plato, we saw the guy in the cave, by himself, he turned and he ventured out. For Rumi, we can't do that. Unless we are kicked out of the cave, right? We're so good in the cave, right? It's so comfortable in the cave that unless we are kicked out of the cave, unless we are feeling massive discomfort in the cave, we're not going to have an incentive to venture out. And this is where suffering comes in. Okay, everybody with me? Right? This is the role of suffering. Suffering is what makes us feel uncomfortable in the cave, uncomfortable in a strictly material world. When we start to feel this discomfort, we start to want to move out of the cave, find something else, right? And this is where we start to have this spiritual thirst, spiritual quest, spiritual journey, right? So that's what he says when he talks about God giving us suffering in order to make us so uncomfortable that we begin to want to leave the cave and find something else, right? So that's in essence what he's talking about here. So let's go in the text and see exactly how he words it, right? So beginning on the top, page 13, the worldly sense. Everybody with me? Put your hand in the screen. Okay. All right. The worldly sense is the ladder to this world. The religious sense is the ladder to heaven, right? You see the two dimensions. You have the world, the heavens, the religious, right? The worldly. These are the two dimensions, just like for Plato. Then he says this: seek the well-being of that sense, right? The religious sense, from the physician, right? In other words, we need a physician, right? Beg the well-being of this sense from the man beloved of God. So basically what he's saying is that as long as we're stuck in the world, we're like a sick person, right? And we need, in a way, a remedy. We need something to bring us out of this sickness, right? And he says this remedy is suffering, which is offered by what he calls the physician. Who's the physician? Remind me? Who is the one giving us this bitter remedy in order to heal us from the material? God, exactly, right? So you can understand this much better if you know what he means by the remedies, right? So I want you to go back and think about the last time you had a cold. And I want you to not think about the NyQuil that your mom gave you because she's tired and working all day. I want you to think about some of the older remedies of your grandmother. What were some of these terrible natural remedies that you were given when you had a cold? Not this sweet stuff they sell in drugstore, right? Horrible, painful stuff. Let's hear it. Give me some examples. Delmas, go ahead.
Honey with lemon.
That's horrible for you?
Yeah, I don't like it.
Honey with lemon. Okay, sing turmeric milk. Yes, it's kind of like, right? Then you have this yellow powder, right? What else? Karuchi, go ahead.
I'm a lot older than some of my classmates, but they make us used to take castor oil.
Oh, yes. Okay. That's horrible. That's nasty.
It was terrible.
By the spoonful?
Yeah,
Oh.
it was meant to have you cleanse in a way. So
Does it help? I'm curious.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The jury is still out. I think they were just torturing us.
Okay, good. Ibatulin.
I had this like pink thing. I don't know what it was, and it was supposed to be sweet, but it just made me vomit. Like because it was that bad. The taste was just that bad.
Must
It
be
made me just
Pepto-Bismol.
vomit.
Is it Pepto-Bismol that they gave
I have
you?
no idea what it was. I was like 4 or 5.
Okay. Core. I see a lot of you all of a sudden jumping to participate. Okay, Core.
It would be like this water boiled with like ginger and like a whole other like stuff, herbs and stuff.
Ginger tea and herbs. Castaneda.
Yeah, Professor, it was a mix of onion with garlic. It was really nasty, horrible. Yeah, and I was a picky child, so you can imagine.
Yes, here's one that I do. I take jalapeno peppers and I fry them when I have a cold, and then I eat them with bread. And they're like, they just burn everything and they destroy the disease. And it works really well, right? Let's see if there's one more. Ahmad, you wanted to add?
I don't know if anybody's ever tried oregano oil. That I have a I have a taste for spice, but that thing, oh man.
Okay, great. So you see how the remedies are bitter. They're not good, but they create healing, right? Hopefully. This is what Rumi is saying. Suffering is like one of those bitter remedies. It's the ginger teas, the castor oil, right? It's the jalapeno peppers. And they taste horrible, right? We're not happy, but they have a cleansing effect. That's what he's saying. The only way out of the sickness of the material realm, of being stuck in the material realm, is this bitter remedy of suffering, which then purifies us, right? So let's go now into the 3 ways that suffering purifies us. Let's turn the page. I'm going to pick 3 out of all of those. I'm going to look at ruin the house. I'm going to put it here. So number 1, ruin the house. Number 2, cut off the water. And number 3, raised the fortress. Okay. So let's start with the first one. First thing that suffering does, it ruins the house, but for the sake of the golden treasure. So how would you interpret the house? What does it mean when in our lives the house is ruined? What does the house represent for us? What is it that Rumi is alluding to when he says the house is ruined? Cor, you want to answer that? I see you have your hand up. Was that from before? Okay. All right, let's see who else. Ahadai, go ahead.
Anything that means a lot to you, like your job, your family members, anything that means a lot to you.
Exactly. Anything that gives you security, right? Your job, your money, your family, your loved ones, anything that makes you feel safe in the world, right? Like the house, anything that protects you, like your finances, like your job, boom, destroyed. And what Rumi is saying, when this happens, know that there is a treasure that could emerge, right? So this is very powerful, right? Any of us, and we will all go through one of these, right? Any of us who is going through this kind of total loss of the finances or stability or emotional stability, right? What Rumi is saying is look deeper, right? As you look deeper, you will discover within this chaos, within this terrible ruin, a treasure. So can anyone tell me, what kind of treasure can you find when you have lost everything? What is the treasure that emerges out of such a loss? Karuchi, you want to try?
Yeah, I was going to say that when you're left with nothing, it might change your perspective in terms of what's really important.
Okay,
Right. So when you're not focused on the car or the house or the money or the girlfriend or all this other stuff, then you're just left there with you in a place in the world where you might even be forced to change your perspective.
So what do you discover? Tell us, you haven't told us.
I guess you discover yourself, and then you discover God. Because
Okay.
then you might be desperate enough in that moment to cry out and say, help me.
Okay, very good, right? So many of us, right, when we've lost our earthly securities is the moment where something in our heart bursts open, right? And something propels us, right, in the arms of God. So at that moment, many of us actually find God, right? That's one way. There's other ways, though, beyond just finding God. There are other treasures. Of course, God is the ultimate treasure, right? But there are other treasures. Anybody want to try telling me what other treasures emerge out of a situation where you've lost everything? You've lost your job, your finances, your loved ones. Al-Hadai, go ahead.
Wisdom and growth.
Okay, very good, right? Another treasure, wisdom, right? You now know more about the world. You know more about yourself. You're learning, right, through experience, and you're growing, right? Anything else? I have one more treasure in mind that you can find when you've lost everything, when you've suffered in general. Jaramillo, motivation, tell me. What do you mean?
Professor, yes, I think motivation, you find motivation out of all those things, especially when you find yourself, when you're lost, basically. You motivate yourself when you lose everything because you want to improve and become better.
Okay, so it can motivate yourself to make a change, maybe. It can motivate you to shift your perspective, motivate you to change, you know, to look deeper. Absolutely, it's that suffering is motivation for shift, right? There has to be a shift when there is suffering. Absolutely, I like that. Anybody else? I thought I saw a hand. It just disappeared. Okay. Yeah, another thing I'll just add myself. Okay, I see here Singh is saying you live life with a new attitude. Absolutely right. You can change your perspective on life, right? You can change, like Karuchi was saying, what is important. Your priorities change, right? Something else that you gain when you go through deep suffering is compassion, right? You become more compassionate to others who are suffering instead of thinking, you know, oh, it's their fault. They should have been more careful, right? You judge less, right? You become less judgmental. Many things can happen through that experience, right? But we have to gain the ability to see deeper beyond the cave, right? We have to develop X-ray eyes, right? Let me write this down. This is good. X-ray eyes. In other words, this is the eyes that can see beyond the obvious to see what is happening, right? You're looking beyond the physical realm to see what is actually happening on the metaphysical level, right? This is important. Let me write this down. So this is you see beyond the physical to the metaphysical realm. Metaphysical means, meta means beyond, right? So in other words, there's always these two realms. And what I've noticed in my life, right, is that they are inversely proportional. In other words, if it's going great in the material realm, and not much growth taking place in the metaphysical realm, right? If you're going horrible in the physical realm, a lot is going on in the metaphysical realm, right? So very often when we look at the physical and we're like, oh, all is good, it's all good. On the metaphysical, not much progress, right? But if on the physical everything is chaos and ruin, you can be sure that on the metaphysical level, a lot is going on. There is a lot of growth, a lot of broadening, a lot of shifts taking place in you, even though you can't see it, right? So we have to develop the metaphysical eyes, X-ray eyes, or in the Hindu philosophy, third eye, right? To be able to see beyond the physical, to sense what is actually taking place in the metaphysical realm. This is very helpful to develop this vision when you're going through pain, right? So that's the first thing we learn. Okay, let's go to the next one. Cut off the water, and as a result, cleanse the riverbed. Okay, what does this mean? What does it mean, first of all, that the water is cut off? How would you interpret that? Ahmad, go ahead.
I saw it as a break away from your mundane worldly affairs. So you have to cut off and sort of break away from this physical world. And that's done through the suffering. So you
And that would cleanse you to be isolated. Is that what you're saying? As the result here, he says, is a cleansing. So
I took it as you have to stop the water in order for it to get purified, and then you can let it flow again.
Exactly.
So you have to have that break in between.
Got it. So any breaks we're taking, right? Whether it's for the prayer, right? We talked about the 5 days or 5 times of prayer, or maybe a retreat, right? Or isolation is a kind of way to purify. Okay, I like that. Very good. Let's any other ways to interpret this? This cut off the water. Let's see. I think there's only Ahmad. One way to interpret it is see the cutoff of the water as the cutoff from the emotional feed, right? In other words, you were in a relationship and you were being nourished by that relationship, and all of a sudden, paf, there's a breakup, or there's a divorce, there's a separation, and now what, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about how this type of suffering can lead to a cleansing, or how we can cleanse. And I want to take the opportunity to do a very brief detour into the art of forgiveness. Okay, so forgiveness is a word that a lot of us use, but we don't truly understand. And so I want to use this particular quote here, because I believe here he's actually talking about this this technique, or this art of forgiveness. So I want to do a little detour into what does it mean to forgive, and how do we do it, and how is it a deeply cleansing activity, right? So everybody ready for a quick forgiveness workshop? Put your hand in the screen. Are you with me? Okay, All right. So, and then we'll come back to Rumi, but I think that's what he's alluding to. So, forgiveness, actually, Hebrew concept, right? The actual word in the Hebrew is nasa, which actually literally means to carry. So, this is interesting, right? Forgiveness means to carry. What? Right? What does it mean, right? Somebody does something bad to you, and now you gotta carry it, right? What is going on? How is this forgiveness? So let me explain a little bit, right? The way I understand this Hebrew verb for forgiveness. Basically, what this is saying is that forgiveness is the ability to take without throwing back in the face of your enemy. In other words, the enemy does something to you, and you choose, instead of throwing it back and reacting back, you carry it, right? Are you following me? I'll get into deeper detail. Put your hand on the screen with me, right? So let me give you an example. Your enemy or somebody in your family starts yelling at you for no reason. Your first reaction is what? Natural reaction, what is it? If you're like me?
Retaliate.
Yes, you're gonna yell back. You're gonna be like, "How? Why are you talking to me like this?" Right? You start to yell back, right? Or you accumulate, or you say nothing, but you accumulate this deep resentment that is going to stay forever between you and your sibling, right? There's two people, right? Two kinds of people: the ones who violently retaliate and the ones who silently retaliate, right? And so there's this cold war or warm war. But in both cases, you are retaliating, even when you're saying nothing. The fact that you are accumulating resentment, you're still reacting, but you're reacting inside, right? So to forgive is to refuse to retaliate. In other words, is to refuse to let the other person's negativity make you negative. Okay, let me say that again. This is what is forgiveness. Forgiveness is to refuse to allow the other person's poison to poison you and your behavior and to make you like them, right? They yell at you, now you're yelling at them, you've become exactly like them, right? Or they yell at you and now you have this vengeance in your heart, same thing, right? The moment, however, that you choose, you do this doesn't mean I'm gonna do it. I'm better than that, right? As Michelle Obama says, they go low, we go high, right? This is forgiveness, right? In other words, you choose not to throw it back. Whether you throw it back violently or you throw it back passive aggressively, right? You choose to not let their behavior affect your behavior. In other words, you choose to receive what they're doing without letting it poison you, right? This, I believe, is the essence of forgiveness. It is not allowing what the other person is doing to make you toxic, right? So this is very powerful action on 3 levels, right? Let's talk a little bit about the benefits of forgiveness, right? Number 1, you protect yourself when you do this. Let me explain. Somebody yells at you, it hurts, right? You feel hurt, but the moment your pain becomes toxic and reactive and vengeful and resentful and violent, you have now entered damage, right? So pain is not necessarily damage, right? Pain is pain. Pain will go after a while, right? Damage will stay forever. The pain becomes damage when the pain becomes toxic. In other words, the pain now transforms into anger, transforms into resentment, transforms into violence. The moment you allow your pain to transform in that way, you are now creating damage, because the pain never damages. Let me be very clear on that. When someone hurts you, the pain you're feeling cannot damage you. It's your reaction to the pain that can damage you. Let me write this down. Pain never damages us. We don't have to be afraid of pain. Pain comes and goes, right? What damages us, right, is our reaction to the pain. How we react to the pain. Are you going to not allow the pain to make you toxic, or are you going to allow the pain to change you into a resentful person, into a violent person, into a reactive person, into a cynical person, into a cold-hearted person, into a closed-off person, right? That's when damage occurs. And this type of damage can last your whole life. Once you allow the pain to become toxic The pain will go within a week or two, or a month or two. The damage will stay with you for years, right? And so forgiveness, which is the choice, conscious choice to not allow the pain to become toxic, is freeing, because you're in a way avoiding the damage that the pain can inflict. Am I clear on this? Put your hand in the screen. This is really important. Everybody following me? Okay. So that's the first thing you do. Forgiveness actually doesn't even have anything to do with the other person. They don't even have to ask for forgiveness for you to do this. Forgiveness is for you to be free from the damage. You are, in a way, protecting yourself from the toxicity of what happened to you. You're protecting yourself from allowing this poison to enter you. You carry, meaning you don't throw back, whether you throw back internally through resentment or throw back externally through acts of vengeance or violence, right? You choose not to allow their behavior to affect your behavior. That's forgiveness. They don't even have to ask for forgiveness. You're doing it for you, right? Second thing it does, for the other. What does it allow when you've forgiven or done this process, right? You don't allow yourself to retaliate. What are you allowing for the other? How is this a gift to the other also? To choose not to react to the pain they've inflicted. How are you, in a way, giving them something? Anybody want to tell me, what is the gift you're giving the other when you choose to forgive? Karuchi, go ahead.
What I was going to suggest is that you're also removing the opportunity for them to create poison and damage within themselves.
Why is that?
Because you're not projecting your poison onto them.
Okay, good. Absolutely. Because if you start yelling at them, then they'll get even worse, right?
Yeah.
And now they're growing in toxicity, right? They're becoming resentful. They're becoming even more violent. So you're preventing them from themselves becoming damaged by what they have done, right? Absolutely, right? So that's one way that we, in a way, that our act of forgiveness protects the other, right? Also gives them a fresh beginning, right? You have now created the conditions of possibility for a reconciliation, right? If you've learned to let go of the resentment, right, and the violence, you are creating the conditions of possibility for a possible reconciliation. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It depends on the other, but you're creating that space, right? If you're not resentful, if you're not violent, you're approachable. Possible relationship is possible, right? I mean, a connection is possible again, right? I see another hand. Delmas, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add that you also provide them something that they don't deserve. So you're, in other words, you're being gracious to them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. You're in a way showing them love, right? You're being gracious. And this in itself can have an effect on them, right? All of us, this can have an awakening effect on them. They can realize, maybe I shouldn't have done this. And they can actually, you can actually transform the, how shall I put it? You can shift the course of their lives by forgiving, because they can actually realize through the love you're giving them, maybe I don't want to be like this anymore, right? And they will feel even more acutely how they have wronged you and want to change, right? I know for me, when in my family we all yell at each other. That's how we communicate. And at times I've yelled at a family member and they have had the self-control to stay silent. I was mortified. I would have preferred that they yelled back. Like the fact that they stayed, silent and kind of dignified, and I could feel their pain. It was it was unbearable. I had to go and apologize, whereas if they had yelled back, there would have been no change of heart on my part, right? So forgiveness can actually create conditions of possibility for the other to have a change of heart, right? You're really opening up for them new possibilities, right? So this is a very powerful action, right? Not only for you, but for the other, and ultimately for the world, because you are now, instead of multiplying the pain and the negativity by retaliating, you're reducing it. You're absorbing it, right? Imagine a fight, someone does something, you do something, they do something, and you continue, and it gets bigger and bigger, and the world now is full of your business, right? Imagine you choose to just absorb it. In other words, carry it, right? Nasa. You are in fact decreasing the amount of negativity in the cosmos, right? You are actually cleansing the world, not only yourself, not only the other, but the world. So it's very powerful, right? Activity. And so I believe this is what Rumi is talking about here when he says, cut off the water and cleanse the riverbed. This is alluding, I think, to these moments where our loved ones have left us, right? Whether it's a divorce or a breakup or a friendship, right? Or a parent or a child, right? That has run off, dumped us, right? And we tend to get resentful, or they're, mean, or they're whatever, they're doing something, that is damaging. And we choose in a way to go through the experience gracefully, with the attitude of forgiveness. That kind of pain, instead of making us more toxic, will make us more pure, right? There is a purifying effect when you choose to suffer gracefully, choosing to forgive whatever is happening. You are actually cleansing instead of becoming even more cluttered, right? So there's two ways to suffer, right? First way to suffer is you get all closed off and angry and resentful, and you stay angry and resentful your whole life. And then you close your heart and you become cold, and all of this is happening. This is the first way. There's no cleansing there, right? So a lot of us choose that path, right? And so suffering is not seen as a purifying effect. But if you choose, so there's a way to suffer, right? And what I'm talking about here is a way to suffer gracefully, where you choose forgiveness at every step of the way. If you do this, no matter what happens to you, you'll come out better, right? You'll come out purer, broader. Your heart will have a larger capacity for love. You'll come out better person, right? So it's really depends on us, right? How we suffer is really what is going to dictate whether we are cleansed or whether we are damaged, right, by the suffering. And there is nothing that happens to us, by the way. I want to be very clear on that, right? Nothing that happens to us can damage us. Nothing that happens to us can, destroy us. It is always how we respond to it is what is going to decide whether we are damaged for life by something that somebody did, or whether we come out of it cleansed, resurrected, right? So a lot of us, right, we get stuck. We're like, oh yeah, my parents did this, or my brother did this, or this, my ex-husband did this, and now this is why I'm like this, right? This is why my life sucks, right? This is why I can't move on. It's not what they did. It's how you responded to it, right? Anytime you're stuck because of something that someone did to you, it's not them, it's you, right? How did you choose to respond to what they did? Nothing anyone does can truly damage us and keep us stuck. It's how we react to it, right? And the way we react to it determines whether we come out of the experience purified, a better person, or a worse person, right? Everybody with me on this? Put your hand on the screen if you're following. Why I see so many people with their screens off? Pinto, Rosario, Pelico, Aslam, Singh, Cueva, Isam. That's rude. Put your faces on.
Sorry, they were cooking in the kitchen. Sorry.
I don't care.
Okay, they care though.
So, I'm happy to see all of your crazy backgrounds. Okay, great. All right, last one, 3 minutes. Unless there was a question about this. Any questions on the past two ones that we talked about? Okay. All right. So last one. This is very quick. Raised the fortress and took it from the infidel, and then reared upon it 100 towers and ramparts. So since I have only 3 minutes, I'm just going to tell you what I think this means. You can interpret it also other ways, but this, for me, seems to have to do with the way that we wall ourselves in. When somebody does something to us, a lot of us choose resentment, violence, but a lot of us choose actually to just block ourselves off and never allow anybody close to us anymore. We create, right, a fortress, right? And we think that we are protecting ourselves and going to live our best lives with this fortress. And what we're seeing here is that this fortress has to be raised and the infidel has to be defeated. So who's the infidel? Who is this? Infidel is the pagan, right? That has taken over, the enemy that has taken over. Who is this enemy? Exactly, Ahmad, yourself. We have within all of us an enemy who doesn't want us to live fully and who is telling us in our ear, don't ever open yourself up again. Don't ever trust again. Don't ever love again. Put that wall up, baby, right? Put it up. You need to protect yourself. Don't let that man talk to you like that. Don't let that woman treat you like that. Don't you, right? And we have these words in our heads where we're like, yeah, right? I'm not going to let anybody talk to me like that. Don't you talk to me like that. And here we are with a big wall, right? And that's the person's telling you this is not your friend. That's what we're learning. Is the infidel. Anything, any voice in your head telling you to protect yourself and to fight for yourself is the voice of the infidel. Any voice telling you to erect a wall, and I don't mean boundaries, I mean walls, right? Boundaries are good. Walls is what keeps a person from ever being close to you, right? And what Rumi is proposing here is we have to have the courage to raise the fortress, defeat the infidel, and then I would interpret the 100 towers and ramparts as proper boundaries that allow for intimacy and connection, right? Moving away from the wall to a kind of more permeable, open boundary, right? So that would be one way that we can interpret this. And I would love to hear what you had to say. In fact, anybody want to give a different interpretation? Maybe we can have one person try it. Nobody? Okay. Ahmad, go ahead.
The way that I saw it is that I got a vision of the fortress as being sort of crooked. So in order to straighten it, you have to deconstruct it and build it up again. And a straight and right built structure is much more stable
Yes.
and indestructible.
I like that. So like maybe like a psychological breakdown could be a way that the fortress is raised and then we have to rebuild ourselves in a more healthy way. Like for example, we go into a depression or we have panic attacks or right? And we realize, okay, I need to reset myself, right? So we have a breakdown in order to rebuild. Nice, I like that. Excellent. Okay, great. Good. So since we're out of time, I'm going to let you go. If anyone still has questions or issues about what we talked about, you can stay. I'm going to stop the recording.